The NHL has existed for over 100 years, with over 7,700 skaters across multiple generations. In all that time, with all the way in which the sport has evolved, through all those players, nobody has scored more goals than Alexander Ovechkin.
Here is Ovechkin, shoots, he scores! He scores! Number 895!
It's without a doubt the crowning achievement in his career, but Ovechkin's built a legacy going far beyond just being the guy who has put the most pucks in the net. The legend of Alexander Ovechkin is one of the greatest among any athlete to ever play the sport, so today, let's take a look at the career and legacy of the Great Eight, the greatest goal scorer and one of the greatest players in the history of the sport. Alexander Ovechkin was born into an athletic family. Both his parents were athletes, his mother an Olympic gold medalist. He took an interest in hockey very young, and was soon identified as an elite athlete himself. Midway through 8th grade, Alex was moved into Dynamo Sports School, a part of the Dynamo Moscow system, preparing him for his eventual rise to Russia's top division of hockey on the Dynamo squad. The hype built within Russia, then across the world. People took notice of the fact that he was 16 getting legitimate burn in the Russian Championship League, and producing like crazy at the World U18 Championships. The U18s are a standout moment in Ovechkin's early career. Russia claimed second place in the 2002 tournament, winning every single game before their final one against the United States. Regardless, Ovechkin still walked away looking like a champion. Across his 8 games, he produced 18 points, including a ridiculous 14 goals. That tally still holds to this day as the joint single tournament record, done as a 16-year-old, with another year still of tournament eligibility. If he hadn't gotten there already, Ovechkin was the clear-cut projected top pick. The following years did nothing to slow his hype. Ovechkin's legend only grew bigger when the Florida Panthers attempted to draft him on 4 separate occasions throughout the 2003 draft. They argued that removing leap year dates was enough to make him eligible a year in advance, which the NHL obviously rejected. It's not often NHL organizations are willing to openly make themselves look foolish, but even a long shot at Ovechkin was worth the chance. The following draft, it was for real, and Ovechkin was undoubtedly going number 1. The 2004 draft lottery was a huge moment for teams, finding out who would be receiving the right to select the young superstar sniper. Among the most likely options to win were the last-placed Pittsburgh Penguins. The Penguins had been bottom 5 in the NHL for the past 3 seasons, notably moving up the year prior to select Marc-Andre Fleury first. The Chicago Blackhawks had been second last, a team that fell off a cliff year to year with the departure of some of their star players. Third most likely was the Washington Capitals, a team that had massively underachieved, maybe more than any other team. All 3 teams desperately needed a spark. But while the top 3 remained the same, the order didn't. Chicago selected Cam Barker 3rd overall, Pittsburgh selected Evgeny Malkin, and it was the Capitals who leapfrogged the both of them to earn the right to select Alexander Ovechkin. The Washington Capitals have existed since 1974, and been relatively successful throughout their history. The team had a consecutive playoff streak spanning 14 years throughout the 80s and 90s, even made a Stanley Cup final in their first postseason after that streak ended. Despite that, the organization historically had pretty few superstars. Dennis Maruk crushed over 130 points in the 80s. Mike Gardner and Peter Bondra were star-level offensive contributors. Nobody they'd ever had the ability and potential that Ovechkin did. He was the Capitals' first top pick since Rick Green in 1976, their most hyped prospect since Bobby Carpenter. The Capitals were ready to welcome their newest young star, and Ovechkin looked like he was ready to play at the NHL level. Unfortunately, they'd have to wait a little longer for that than they'd planned. In what would have been Ovechkin's rookie season, the 2004 lockout hit. We'll never know what could have been with that extra Ovechkin season, but it did open up some opportunities that wouldn't have otherwise been possible. Because when the NHL returned in 2005, it set the stage perfectly for a rivalry of generational talents that would go on to last multiple decades. Because of the lockout, 2 rookie classes had the opportunity to debut at the same time. 2004's class, led by number 1 pick Alexander Ovechkin, and 2005's, led by number 1 pick Sidney Crosby. Washington's Eastern Conference rivals, a team they'd faced 7 times in the postseason since 1990, had landed their franchise forward. It was the big, bruising, Russian sniping winger and the smart, cerebral Canadian playmaking center. Ovechkin versus Crosby, and it all began that rookie year in 2005. The NHL wasn't the first time the two played against each other. They had also gone head-to-head in the 2005 World Juniors. Russia and Canada proved to be the 2 best teams, facing off in the final, where Crosby and Canada would claim a 6-1 win. Crosby came out ahead in that first matchup. The script flipped in their rookie year. Crosby scored 102 points, 5th among NHL rookies all time. It wasn't enough to beat Ovechkin, who scored 106 with 52 goals, giving him the second most productive single season in Washington Capitals history already, and the Calder Trophy. In just one season, Alexander Ovechkin had proven himself as one of the NHL's premier snipers and power forwards. He equaled Ilya Kovalchuk for the 3rd most goals in the league. He laid crushing hits, already one of the biggest bodies in the league. And he was already etched into Capitals history, looking destined to become the franchise's most exciting player. It took just a single season before you could make the argument that Alexander Ovechkin was the best player the Capitals had ever had. At bare minimum, that rookie season at least showed qualities of a generational star that no other prior Capital had been. By the conclusion of his 5th season, Ovi occupied 4 of the top 5 single-scoring seasons in Capitals history. Each of those involved him hitting the 50-goal mark, leaving Ovechkin with 269 goals before he turned 25. That already placed him in the top 4 of all-time Washington Capitals goal scorers. No question, Alexander Ovechkin was already the best Washington Capital ever. It was that same season in which Chris Clark was traded mid-season to the Columbus Blue Jackets, leaving the captaincy open. On December 28, 2009, Clark was traded to Columbus. On January 5, 2010, Ovechkin was named captain of the Washington Capitals. It was his team from there on out, and has remained as such for over 15 years. Only 32 players in the league have the ability to be the greatest player in their franchise's history. The standard to become that level of player varies wildly. For Seattle, it's just the best player they've had on their team for the last 4 seasons. For Edmonton, someone like Connor McDavid has a near impossible task trying to surpass Wayne Gretzky. The Washington Capitals have existed for 50 seasons, going now into their 51st. Ovechkin has become the longest tenured captain in Capitals history, and one of the longest in NHL history. Since he became captain, the Capitals have posted 100-plus points 9 out of 16 seasons, and made the postseason 14 out of 16 seasons. Washington famously struggled to make it out of the second round for quite some time, and during that time, Ovechkin's status as a leader and all-time player was called into question. He would reach 30 years old, still without a championship, while Crosby had won 3. Washington had crazy expectations put on them each year, and consistently failed to deliver. And just when it felt like people had given up, they finally got there. In 2016, the Washington Capitals posted 120 points in the regular season, with the most wins in franchise history. They got to the second round, where they would face the Penguins, then lose in 6 games. The Penguins went on to win the Cup that year. In 2017, the Washington Capitals posted 118 points in the regular season, with the second most wins in franchise history. They got to the second round, where they would face the Penguins, then lose in 7 games. The Penguins went on to win the Cup that year. Those 2 seasons painted the Capitals, and by extension Ovechkin, as frauds. Back-to-back President's Trophy winners who couldn't get it done once they faced a real contender. In 2018, the Washington Capitals posted 105 points in the regular season, a steep decline from their past 2 years. They got to the second round, where they would face the Penguins. This time, things went a little differently.
It is Ovechkin moving back. He gets it on to Kuznetsov, moving on in. He scores! The Capitals have made it to the Eastern Conference Final for the first time in 19 years.
With that, the floodgates were open. They were only really halfway to completing the job, but beating the Penguins had seemed completely impossible, and yet, they'd done it. Tampa Bay in the third round proved an even tougher matchup, with the Bolts taking a 3-2 series lead. Back-to-back shutouts for the Capitals put that to bed, and all of a sudden, the Capitals were back in the Stanley Cup Final, where they'd only gotten once before, exactly 20 seasons prior. Standing in their way were the Vegas Golden Knights, in the midst of their miracle opening season playoff run. Vegas took Game 1, and Game 2 was contentious. The Capitals led 3-2 with just over 2 minutes left. Vegas got a chance, and then Braden Holtby makes the save. And the Capitals never look back. After Game 1, it was 4 straight wins, and the Washington Capitals took home the Stanley Cup for the first time. Ovechkin had been a top 2 scorer in rounds 1 through 3 for the Capitals, and remained a point per game in the finals. His consistency and leadership were a huge factor in the reasoning to give him the Conn Smythe as playoff MVP. Alexander Ovechkin had brought a cup home to Washington. The pressure was off, and he and the team celebrated appropriately. The Stanley Cup was the last thing Ovechkin needed to do pretty much everything he possibly could as a member of the Washington Capitals. He was their greatest player even long before that, then brought home a championship to an organization that had never seen one, and has had 7 seasons since to build on all his accomplishments. Ovechkin sits nearly 600 points clear on the Capitals' all-time scoring charts. He's the winningest Capital, the longest leading Capital, and not only their top scorer, but one of the top single franchise scorers in NHL history. There are few players that mean more to their respective franchise than Alexander Ovechkin. He is without a doubt the greatest and best Washington Capital ever, a title that he will no doubt hold for decades to come. To be an all-time great, in discussion with the best of the best, you have to have a defining achievement. Sure, Ovechkin may have led the Capitals to a Stanley Cup, and may lead them in all-time scoring stats, but that's not ultimately that unique. All the greats have something, and Ovechkin might very well have the thing. The record is so important that it has to be the first thing brought up in any discussion of Ovechkin's career from now on. The Wayne Gretzky record was thought to be unbreakable, impossible to equal. It wasn't even discussed as a legitimate possibility until a few seasons ago, and even then, it seemed like a long shot. But this past season, Ovechkin broke the record, marking his place as the only person to ever score 895 goals in the National Hockey League. Soon, he'll hit 900. And who knows how much further he can go beyond that. A lot goes into being able to break a record of this magnitude, and it highlights many aspects of Ovechkin's career that make him such a special player. Key among those is just how good of a goal scorer he really is. Ovechkin scored goals in all kinds of ways. He has some of the most dynamic highlights of all time. The standout is the goal, one of the most famous hockey highlights ever. It's a goal unlike we'd ever seen before, and unlike anything we've seen since. It's made even better by the fact it was scored against the Wayne Gretzky coached Phoenix Coyotes in his rookie year, as if being a sign of what was to come. Another one of his famous goals in 2009 did maybe an even better job of showing off his skill set. Against Montreal, in just 5 seconds, he showed off his smarts, speed, control, and power. He bounced the puck to himself, barreled towards Carey Price, was knocked off his balance, and still found a way to jam the puck into the net. What would be the undisputed best goal of a career for most is just one of many for Ovechkin. As he's gotten older, these types of goals have become less possible. It's become more common over time for Ovechkin to let the play come to him, rather than create an explosive moment. This is most obviously apparent now on the power play, where oftentimes Ovechkin will be out there for the full 2 minutes, drifting back and forth between the point and the top of the left face-off circle. As his overall time on ice has decreased each year over the past 4 seasons, Ovechkin's been pretty consistent on the power play, eating up over 4 minutes of power play time a game, even still last season. The power play is obviously a crucial part of Ovechkin's game. He does have the most power play goals in NHL history, and by a pretty wide margin. With all the time he spends there, and all the attention given to the Capitals' strategy there, casuals could be convinced that that's all he's good at. He was joint 5th in power play goals across the NHL last season, but he was 6th across the NHL in even strength goals. He's been largely consistent that same way throughout his career. He's 1st in all-time power play goals and 2nd in all-time even strength goals. No matter how you want it, Ovechkin is going to put the puck in the net. In addition to putting the puck in the net, nobody has put the puck on the net quite like Ovechkin. Throughout the first 11 seasons of his career, he led the NHL in shots on goal 10 times. He's the NHL's all-time leader in the stat, one of only 2 players to cross the threshold of 6,000 shots on goal, joining, then surpassing, Ray Bourque. While he's yet to lead the NHL in shots beyond his age 32 season, Ovechkin's maintained a pretty consistent 82-game pace of 300 shots each year. His career average across 20 years in the NHL is 4.6 shots per game. Ovechkin got to the goals record from being a dynamic talent, and being smart and skilled enough to adapt when he began to slow down. He's had down years at points throughout his career, but he's always bounced back. He's gotten there through being the greatest power play threat in NHL history, where teams sometimes need to shadow him completely and play 4-on-3. And he's gotten there through being a volume shooter, getting more pucks on net throughout his career than anyone else. The smarts, the skill, the threat, and the volume. All of this has been consistent throughout 20 years in the NHL. The goals record isn't possible without incredible skill, but it's also a longevity stat. Alexander Ovechkin isn't just a generational hockey talent, he's also a generational athlete. He's 6'3", been listed at over 230 pounds throughout most of his career, and lack of foot speed has rarely been an issue. He's rarely missed games, rarely injured, and even after suffering a broken leg at 39 years old this past season, it only kept him out a month, and he came back as strong as ever. He's third on the NHL's all-time hits leaderboard, and yet, that wear and tear really doesn't show at all. All of this for someone that consistently eats hot Cheetos in Subway, for someone who can go on a month-long bender after winning the cup and produce even better the next season. Ovechkin is a truly exceptional athlete, just as he is a hockey player. Someone with longevity, consistency, and adaptability, along with supernatural goal-scoring talent, is what it takes to score the most goals in NHL history. Alexander Ovechkin has more of those four elements than any hockey player we have ever seen. It's a total of 20 seasons and nearly 1,500 games for Ovechkin to this point. There are just 73 players who have played 20 or more seasons in the NHL. All set to go around for another year, Ovechkin will become just one of 45 to play 21 or more seasons. His 1,600 career points also put him in a unique club. Only 10 players in NHL history have more career points than Ovechkin. Of course, none of them have more goals. In the span in which Ovechkin has played all these games, he's set and broken many other records and earned many trophies. No one has won the Rocket Richard Trophy more than Ovechkin, who's taken it home 9 times. 45% of all games that Ovechkin has played in his career have been in a season in which he was the NHL's leader in goals. His aged 22 season was the first year he won the Rocket Richard, with a career high of 65 goals. He was 13 goals ahead of second-placed Ilya Kovalchuk. His age 34 season was the most recent year he's won the Rocket Richard, with 48 goals in a shortened 2020 season. His tally was equal to David Pastrnak, sharing the award. With so many changes to Ovechkin himself, to the Capitals, to the way the game is played, Ovechkin has long remained capable of being the greatest goal scorer in the league. Speaking to his consistency, Alexander Ovechkin has the most 30-goal seasons of all time in the NHL, trailed by Mike Gardner, who has 17. Ovechkin has the most 40-goal seasons of all time in the NHL, trailed by Wayne Gretzky, who has 12. Ovechkin has the most 50-goal seasons of all time in the NHL, held jointly between him, Gretzky, and Mike Bossy. If there's a goal-related record, whether it relates closest to pure volume scoring, talent, or longevity, chances are Ovechkin has it, or is just behind the all-time leader. To go along with his 9 Rocket Richard trophies, he has a whole host of other silverware. Of course, the Stanley Cup, along with the Conn Smythe as playoff MVP. The Calder Trophy, the one chance he had at it in a stacked rookie class, and he won it. He's won the Hart Trophy as league MVP 3 times, one of just 9 players to win it 3 or more times. He's also won the Ted Lindsay Award an equal amount of times, recognized by his peers as the best player in the league. Outside of the NHL, Ovechkin's earned some international achievements. He's taken home a gold and a silver medal for Russia in the World Juniors over his 3 participating years in the tournament. Although unable to participate in the 2018 or 2022 Olympics, Ovechkin still made the Russian squad 3 times, in 2006, 2010, and 2014. He was Russia's captain for the World Cup of Hockey in 2016. He was even able to repay Dynamo Moscow for their faith in him as a young player, when in 2013-14, he suited up for them for a huge chunk of the regular season, with the team eventually going on to win the KHL championship. He's been recognized in ways that go beyond just the on-the-ice ability. He was the featured cover athlete in the EA NHL games twice, in 2007 and 2021, again speaking to just how long he's been relevant as a superstar. He also, just this past year, received the Marc Messier Leadership Award. At 20, he wins the award as the most exciting new rookie. At 39, he wins an award recognizing him as one of the best leaders in the NHL. Ovechkin's career tells the story of the greatest statistical goal scorer ever, who holds many records in that department and has earned countless accolades. He's the all-time leader in goals overall, with the all-time lead in game-winning goals, power play goals, and shots on goal all building to that. Beyond the statistics, he's been around and been good for so long, he's just created so many moments. He's probably the first goal many modern hockey fans think of with the goal. He had a legendary game and win against Crosby and the Penguins, with their dueling hat tricks in the postseason in 2009. His iconic 50th goal celebration that drew him so much attention, requesting to be drafted last in the 2015 All-Star Game. All the partying and celebration that followed his championship. Alexander Ovechkin is a true superstar, in whatever sense by which you wish to define it. Ovechkin's career isn't over yet. By the way he's adapted and by the stats he continues to put up, it wouldn't be a total shock to see him have a Jágr-like late career arc. But he'll be 40 by the start of next season, and he only has this last year left on his contract. Although we don't know for sure, it's been rumored for quite some time that he'll return home to Russia, maybe play a season in the KHL again before his hockey career is over. This could be the last season we see of Alexander Ovechkin, in the NHL, or maybe even in general. He needs just 3 more goals to become the first to break 900, 9 more games to become one of few to play 1500. If he manages 77 points, he would reach the threshold of 1700. Beyond that, there's the fact that the Capitals remain competitive, that he's the key cog on a team that finished at the top of the Eastern Conference standings. All the focus is on this season, as it should be, as the Capitals look to get Ovechkin and the franchise their second ever Stanley Cup. Whenever it is over, Ovechkin will be remembered as one of the most hyped prospects, who immediately lived up to it all, and more. As the greatest leader a franchise has ever had, and soon after, the greatest player they've ever had. As someone who's brought back a championship to Washington, various trophies, and so much more. As the greatest goal scorer in NHL history, one of the best players in his generation, and one of the greatest hockey players of all time.